My parents kicked me out after I supported them for years just to give my room to my useless brother, so I cut them off, and they're desperate. Now, I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in my family. Not the fun one, not the wild one, just the one who gets things done. If a bill needed paying, I paid it. If a car broke down, I fixed it, or at least made sure someone competent did. If groceries ran out, I restocked the fridge without a second thought. I've spent countless late nights working extra hours just to keep the house afloat, skipping nights out with friends, ignoring vacations, and putting my own life on hold because that's just what I thought family meant. My younger brother Alex, though, he's the opposite. Lazy, entitled, the kind of person who sees the world as his personal playground. And yet, somehow, every little thing he does, dropping dishes, finishing a meal, even smiling politely, is praised to the skies by mom and dad. Look at Alex, so polite. He's got such charm. Meanwhile, I'm the one paying 3 months' worth of electricity bills on top of rent, fixing a leaky faucet that's been dripping for weeks, and picking up groceries at midnight because mom forgot again. All that effort, taken for granted, even when they say they love me, it's in the same tone they use to order a coffee. Surface level, casual, distant. And the worst part is, I've started noticing the little hints, the things that make me wonder if all these years of dedication are ever truly appreciated. Like that time, I overheard them laughing quietly in the kitchen, mom saying, "Alex is going to need the big room someday, you know?" And dad chuckled like it was some harmless joke. My stomach sank. That harmless joke felt like a slap. I sat there in my room, the hum of the ceiling fan, the only sound, staring at the peeling paint on my walls, wondering, after all these years of sacrifice, all these nights of exhaustion and doing what no one else would, is my place here ever really secure? Or is it just a temporary stop until Alex needs something bigger, better, easier, and I get pushed aside? And in that silence, with the faint smell of old carpet and dinner lingering in the air, a cold thought crept in, maybe. I've been nothing more than a placeholder all along. I'm starting to feel like I'm invisible in my own home. Every morning, I wake up before anyone else, make myself a quick breakfast, and check the bills, online rent, utilities, groceries, everything. By the time mom and dad shuffle into the kitchen, I've already handled half the day's responsibilities. And do they thank me? Rarely. Sometimes they barely notice I even did it. Meanwhile, Alex lounges around, scrolling on his phone, asking for snacks, and getting compliments for helping set the table or taking out the trash. Things I do without ever mentioning them. I came home at 11 p.m., exhausted after a double shift, smelling like grease and cold coffee. The kitchen was a mess, plates, stacked crumbs on the counter, the sink half full of dishes. I groaned and started cleaning, muttering under my breath about how I could never just relax in my own home. Mom walked in, saw me scrubbing, and said, "Thanks, honey. You're such a good boy." But her tone was distant, distracted. She barely looked at me. Alex, on the other hand, walked past with a smug grin and got a pat on the shoulder for taking out the trash earlier that evening. The unfairness hit me like a punch. It's not even just the chores or the money. It's the emotional labor. Listening to mom complain about work, dad rant about bills, soothing Alex when he sulks or gets frustrated's all me. I hold the family together, and they don't even see the strain it puts on me. I'm tired, so damn tired, and every time I bring it up, it's dismissed with a laugh or a shake of the head. He's your brother. Last night, though, I heard something that made my chest tighten. I was halfway to my room when I caught snippets of their conversation in the living room. "Alex really should have the bigger room someday," mom said, voice light, almost teasing. "He deserves it," dad added, chuckling. I froze in the doorway, my hand on the doorframe, listening to them talk about handing over what's mine as if it's a given. My stomach churned. I went to my room and sat on my bed, staring at the cracked window pane. After all these years of keeping the house, of paying my share and then some, was I really just expendable? And if that's the case, what does that say about the sacrifices I've made? I can't shake the feeling that my family doesn't see me at all. That night, I lay in bed listening to the hum of the city outside, the faint buzz of streetlights through the blinds, thinking about all the nights I've stayed late at work, all the weekends I skipped because someone had to be here, keeping everything from falling apart. I've paid for broken appliances, covered unexpected expenses, and made sure no one went hungry. And for what? To be the invisible one, while Alex gets praised for breathing the same air. The next morning, I tried to push it aside, telling myself I was being dramatic. But the tension was impossible to ignore. At breakfast, Mom glanced at Alex with that same soft, indulgent smile, praising him for clearing his plate. "Good job, Alex. That's so responsible of you," she said. Meanwhile, I poured myself coffee and sat silently, knowing no one would acknowledge the 12 hours I'd worked or the money I'd spent making sure there was food on the table later that day. I went to the living room to pick up some bills when I overheard another conversation, this one more direct. "I think it's only fair that Alex gets the big room eventually," Dad said. "After all, he's growing up, and he's such a good kid," Mom agreed. I froze, the paper slipping from my fingers, my heart pounding in my chest. It was one thing to feel unappreciated, but to hear them plan it out like I didn't matter at all, that stung in a way nothing else had. I tried to tell myself it was just talk, that I was overreacting. But every corner of the house seemed to echo the truth, the sacrifices I'd made. The late nights, the skipped social events, the extra shift sigh was nothing more than a placeholder. Alex didn't deserve anything I had worked for, and yet here they were. Planning to hand it to him like it was owed, I sat down on the couch, the worn fabric rough against my fingers, and stared at the peeling wallpaper. The room smelled faintly of last night's dinner, and the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder than usual, almost accusing. How had it come to this? How could I dedicate my life to a family that didn't even see me? And as I sat there, heart heavy, I realized something terrifying. I might have spent my whole life thinking I belonged here, but maybe I never did. The following week was a blur of tension I couldn't escape. Every day I came home exhausted from work, my body screaming for rest, only to step into a house that felt smaller and colder than it ever had. Alex lounged on the couch, phone in hand, flipping through social media with that infuriating grin, while Mom and Dad hovered nearby, subtly praising him for the smallest, most meaningless things. See, he even helped fold the laundry. Mom said one evening, beaming at him, "And I who'd been folding, washing, and ironing clothes for years, without complaint, was invisible." It came to a head on Friday night. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counters after a long day when Dad cleared his throat behind me. "Listen," he started, voice casual, almost too casual. "We've been thinking. Alex should have the bigger room. It's time he has his own space." I froze, the sponge slipping from my hand, water pooling on the counter. "Wait, what?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've lived there my whole life." "That's my room," Mom interjected, her tone light, patronizing even. "We know, honey, but he's growing up, and it's only fair. You'll be fine with the smaller room, won't you?" They smiled, expecting compliance. And for a split second, I almost felt like a child, again like my opinion didn't matter at all. My blood boiled, but the exhaustion made me hesitate. I wanted to shout, to scream, to throw every piece of furniture across the room. Instead, I clenched my fists, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Alex, of course, didn't care. He looked at me smug, like this was some victory I had no right to contest. "Cool," he said lazily, scrolling his phone. "Can't wait." I wanted to punch him. My chest tightened with every word, and for the first time in years, I felt completely powerless in my own home that night, lying on my bed in the smaller, claustrophobic corner of the room I was supposed to call my own. I stared at the cracked ceiling and smelled the faint scent of stale laundry. The realization hit me hard. My parents had made up their minds. Everything I had done, every sacrifice I had made, all the extra hours I'd worked to keep this house afloat, they didn't matter. And as I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, a cold, sinking thought settled in my gut. This wasn't just about the room. They were slowly erasing me from my own family. I woke up the next morning feeling hollow, like I'd been emptied of everything but frustration. The apartment felt smaller than ever, each corner reminding me that I was no longer enough in my parents' eyes. I shuffled through breakfast mechanically, trying to eat while the quiet tension weighed on my chest. Mom and Dad chatted with Alex about his plans for the big room like I wasn't even there. I forced a smile, poured myself coffee, and retreated to the kitchen table. Pretending to read the bills while my stomach churned with anger, I didn't dare voice. It wasn't just about the room anymore. It was about years of being taken for granted, of being the one who held everything together while no one noticed. every late-night shift, every extra payment, every time I stayed home to fix something. While Alex played video games, all of it seemed meaningless now. And yet, I kept doing it. I kept believing that family meant sacrifice, that love meant putting myself last. But staring at the stack of bills I'd meticulously organized, I realized I'd been fooling myself. My dedication wasn't appreciated, it was exploited. I tried to distract myself with work, throwing myself into overtime and side projects, anything to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home. But no matter how tired I was, the thoughts kept creeping back. I remembered the nights I stayed up, fixing the plumbing, the time I lent Dad money to cover an unexpected expense, the countless dinners I cooked after long shifts. And now, they were planning to hand everything I'd built over to Alex like it was his right. The unfairness was crushing. That evening, I overheard them again, whispering in the living room. "He's going to have to move out eventually," Dad said. "It's time he learned some independence," Mom replied, almost with relief in her voice. My hands tightened around my coffee mug, the porcelain pressing into my skin. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of hurt, disbelief, and simmering anger. I sank into the couch, the worn fabric scratching at my arms, and stared at the peeling wallpaper. The smell of last night's dinner lingered faintly in the air, mingling with the tension that had settled in my bones. And as I sat there, it hit me maybe I've been giving everything to people who never intended to see me as anything more than a placeholder. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying every conversation, every sacrifice, every unnoticed effort. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the streetlights outside my window. And then, something I never expected came to light. While grabbing a glass of water, I accidentally overheard Dad on the phone, his voice low and urgent, too hushed for me to catch all of it. But certain words stabbed at me. "Alex, inheritance room, he doesn't deserve it." I froze. My heart hammered as the pieces started falling into place. This wasn't just about a bigger room. This was about money, about property, about control. My parents weren't simply rewarding Alex, they were grooming him, shaping him to inherit, to take over, while I was quietly pushed aside. Every dismissive comment, every overlooked sacrifice, every subtle jab about how I should be more like my brother suddenly had a purpose. And it wasn't my benefit. I retreated to my room, the walls closing in around me. The familiar smell of old carpet and lingering dinner felt suffocating. I sank onto my bed, fists clenched, staring at the cracked ceiling, feeling a mix of rage, betrayal, and disbelief. How could the people who were supposed to love me most plan this behind my back? How could all those years of hard work and loyalty mean so little? I wanted to confront them, to yell, to scream, to throw every ounce of anger into their faces. But a small, icy voice inside me whispered caution. If this was bigger than just the room, if they were playing a long game, then acting impulsively might be exactly what they wanted. I had to be smart. I had to plan. Even as the realization sank in, part of me felt crushed, as if I'd been living under a false sense of security all these years. But another part, the part I hadn't allowed myself to listen to, was alive with a cold determination. If they thought I'd quietly step aside and let Alex take what was mine, they had another thing coming. And as I lay there, staring at the shadows cast by the blinds, a thought twisted in my gut. I wasn't just betrayed. I had a choice now. The next morning, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and resolve. I got up, brewed coffee, and sat at the kitchen table watching Mom fuss over Alex as if he were some delicate flower. Normally, that would have crushed me, made me want to shout, to run away, to collapse. But this time, I just stared. I realized something important. I had the power to stop being their safety net. I didn't have to fix their problems anymore. When Dad asked me to cover a bill he had forgotten, I calmly placed my phone on the counter and said, "I can't this time. You'll have to handle it yourselves." His face tightened. He looked at Mom, eyebrows raised, and I could see the panic flicker across their features. Alex, of course, didn't understand what was happening. He leaned back, confused, scrolling on his phone. "Wait, what do you mean you're not paying?" he asked. I ignored him, sipping my coffee, savoring the strange, heady feeling of refusing to be manipulated. It wasn't easy. That evening, they tried guilt, reminding me of everything I'd done for them over the years. "We raised you, you know," Mom said softly, voice coated in pity. "We just want what's best for Alex now." Dad added. "You'll understand someday. You're too harsh." Normally, I would have crumpled under the weight of those words, but this time I stayed calm. I repeated firmly, "I've done everything I could. I can't keep sacrificing myself while being erased. This ends now." The tension in the room was electric. I could feel Alex shift uncomfortably on the couch, realizing this wasn't going to go the way he expected. Mom's eyes flickered with disbelief, and Dad's jaw tightened, almost trembling. For the first time, I sensed that the balance of power was shifting. That night, I sat alone in my room, the hum of the refrigerator loud in the silence, the familiar smells of the household carpet, faint traces of dinner felt, almost foreign now. I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. For the first time, my parents and Alex couldn't control me. And as I stared at the ceiling, fists clenched, a small, cold smile crept across my face. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd bend, but they had no idea what I was capable of. The days that followed were strange but exhilarating. I stopped running myself ragged for them. Bills went unpaid for a few days, the laundry piled up, dishes sat in the sink, and for the first time in years, no one came to me for answers. Mom and Dad wandered around the house like strangers in their own home, frustrated and confused, realizing just how dependent they had been on me. Alex was worse. He had no idea how to handle anything without me quietly smoothing over the edges. One evening, I watched from the doorway as Mom tried to balance the checkbook. Her hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages. Dad muttered under his breath, cursing his forgetfulness. And Alex, bless him, was standing in the kitchen, holding a stack of laundry like it was a foreign object. How do I?" he started, then gave up with an exasperated sigh, tossing the clothes onto the counter. It was almost poetic. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. The air in the house had shifted. I could almost taste the tension, sharp and metallic, in the quiet moments. The fridge hummed louder. The creak of the floorboards under their feet sounded accusatory. And every glance I caught from them felt like a silent plea. I refused to answer. For once, I was untouchable. To the faint buzz of the streetlights outside, I realized just how much power I'd had all along. I had been the glue holding this family together, and the moment I stepped back, the cracks appeared immediately. I wasn't doing anything dramatic, just refusing to be used, but the effect was undeniable. And yet, even as satisfaction curled in my chest, a small part of me lingered on the doubt. Could I maintain this boundary? Could I resist their pleas, their manipulations, their guilt-tripping? Because I knew they wouldn't stop trying. And somewhere in the shadows of my thoughts, I felt it coming, the moment when they'd realize just how much they'd lost, and when Alex would finally have to confront the truth of his own incompetence. But until then, I simply watched, silent, untouchable, and finally free. It didn't take long for the cracks to widen further. A week into my withdrawal, reality hit them harder than I expected. Mom came into my room that evening, voice trembling with frustration she tried to mask as concern. "You can't just abandon us like this," she said, pacing the small space, her hands wringing. "We've always relied on you. We need you." I looked at her quietly, sipping my water, letting the words sink into the air between us. "I've been here. I've done everything I could," I said slowly, keeping my voice calm. "But I'm done being erased. I'm done being invisible in my own family." My words hung heavy, and I could see the disbelief in her eyes. Dad appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You're being unreasonable," he said. "You think this is easy for us." And in that moment, it hit me the rock bottom low I'd been avoiding. Sitting there, hearing my parents plead and manipulate, I realized how lonely I truly was in this fight. No one understood the years I'd spent carrying them, the emotional labor, the money, the endless patience. Even Alex avoided my gaze clearly. Uncomfortable now, realizing the safety net he'd relied on had been pulled away. I felt the weight of it, all the isolation, the emotional exhaustion, the doubt creeping in like a shadow. I wanted to break down, to scream, to throw myself into their arms and beg them to understand. But I didn't. Instead, I closed my eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath, feeling the raw ache in my chest. For the first time, I acknowledged that their desperation didn't erase my pain. It didn't erase the years of being overlooked. Later that night, I wandered the house, the faint smell of dinner lingering, the refrigerator humming. the creak of the floorboards under my own feet reminding me of every step I'd taken alone. I realized the full extent of their dependence and the quiet power I now held. The thought twisted in my gut. I could walk away and they would crumble. And as I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, a small, dangerous satisfaction settled over me. They finally understood what it felt like to be powerless, and I was just getting started by the next morning. I knew it was time to turn the tables completely. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to beg for recognition. I just had to let the truth of their dependence speak for itself. I started small, pointing out unpaid bills and unfinished chores in casual conversations with extended family when they came by. "Looks like the electricity bill hasn't been paid yet," I mentioned casually one afternoon to my cousin when she stopped in. Her eyebrows shot up. Mom's cheeks flushed, Dad's jaw tightened, and Alex froze, holding a stack of unfolded laundry like a deer caught in headlights. I could see the realization dawn on them. Everything they'd relied on me for, everything they'd taken for granted, had been under my control. And I had stopped. The house that had been humming with their casual authority felt suddenly precarious. They were scrambling for solutions they had no idea how to find. And Alex had no idea how much of the house's functionality rested on my shoulders. Watching him fumble with the simplest tasks was almost intoxicating. That evening, I decided to escalate subtly. While they bickered over who would handle the overdue bills, I sent a message to my extended family detailing some of the responsibilities I'd quietly taken on for years. I didn't embellish it, didn't need embellishing, but the way the words landed and the incredulous reactions I received left my parents speechless. Alex looked at me, confusion and panic in his eyes. "Wait, you did all of this?" he asked, voice small and shaky. I just nodded, calm and measured. "I did what needed to be done," I said. "And now you're going to have to figure things out on your own." The weight of those words, the power shift, it was tangible. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. Dad's face was pale, and Alex looked like he'd just realized the safety net had vanished. That night, I sat in my room, the hum of the refrigerator now comforting rather than oppressive. The air smelled faintly of dinner, but I noticed every tension-filled glance between them, and I knew this was only the beginning. Soon, they'd have to confront everything they'd taken for granted, and I would be the one watching it all unfold. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the sunlight slanting through the blinds, dust motes floating lazily in the air. Mom stormed into my room, her face flushed, voice trembling with a mix of anger and desperation. "This has gone far enough," she shouted. "You can't just cut us off. After everything we've done for you." I looked up from the book I was pretending to read, calm, collected. "Everything you've done for me?" I asked, my voice steady, controlled. "You mean everything I've done for you? I've paid bills, fixed your mistakes, covered your lapses, and still, you treat me like I'm expendable." Dad appeared behind her, arms crossed, trying to maintain his composure. "You're being too harsh," he said, voice clipped. "We raised you. You owe us respect." I stood up, feeling the familiar surge of emotional hurt, determination all wrapped into one. "Oh, you respect," I snapped. "I gave you everything I had, and this is how you repay me. By planning to give my room, the space I grew up in, to Alex. By treating me like a placeholder." My words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. Alex shuffled uncomfortably, his smug confidence gone. I didn't know it was that bad," he mumbled, voice small. I fixed him with a look. "Of course you didn't. You've been riding on my back your whole life." Mom's lips quivered, eyes glistening, but there was no more manipulation I could fall for. Dad's jaw clenched, and for a moment, silence swallowed the room. I realized then the power had shifted entirely. I wasn't begging. I wasn't pleading. I was asserting myself, reclaiming the authority I'd given away for too long by the time I walked out of the room. The tension was almost tangible, hanging in the air like smoke. Mom and Dad were desperate, and Alex was shaken. They finally understood that I wasn't theirs to control anymore. And as I closed the door behind me, a sense of calm washed over me. I was done being the invisible one, the overworked, overlooked son, and in that quiet moment, I knew they'd have to live with the consequences of years of taking me for granted. There was nothing they could do to fix it. I woke up that morning feeling lighter than I had in years. The house was quiet, almost unnervingly so, but I could sense the tension in every corner. Mom and Dad were moving around nervously, speaking in hushed tones, and Alex stayed close to them, sheepish and unsure. It was almost poetic. Their dependence on me now completely laid bare. Their authority dissolved by their own choices. I made coffee and carried it to the kitchen, casually setting it down on the counter. "Morning," I said, voice calm, almost warm. Mom glanced at me, eyes wide, like she was seeing me for the first time in decades. "Good morning," she said softly, but there was no certainty in her tone. Dad nodded, silent, his usual smugness replaced with unease. Alex looked at me awkwardly, unsure if he should speak. I took a seat, sipping my coffee, watching them flounder. I didn't have to say anything more. The silence, the subtle chaos of a house running without its unpaid caretaker, spoke louder than words ever could. Every unpaid bill, every overlooked chore, every task I had done for years was now their responsibility, and they were struggling. It wasn't revenge in the cruel sense. I didn't humiliate them or gloat. I simply stopped being the person who allowed their negligence and favoritism to continue unchecked, and in that restraint, I found power. I had given so much of myself to a family that barely noticed, and now I could finally take care of myself. I looked out the window, the sun casting warm light across the room, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. I had set boundaries, reclaimed my space, and made them realize the true value of what they'd taken for granted. My parents and Alex could stew in their frustration and desperation. They had no one to blame but themselves. As I sipped my coffee, the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background, I smiled quietly to myself. I wasn't just free, I was empowered, respected, and finally living on my own terms. And the most satisfying part, they knew it. The room felt lighter, the air cleaner. And I realized something profound. Sometimes the strongest revenge isn't in confrontation. It's in walking away and thriving while they watch, powerless to stop you.